cookies. Okay, so generate tests.bat. So we gotta build and then run the test generator in this script. It's very similar to what build tests does. Now this does raise the question, Honestly, this raises several questions. So, do I want to generate my generated tests into this file folder with the other input scripts, or do I want to generate those into 4coder generated? You know, these, I'm looking at it, and these are all being shipped. So that answers that question. I'm generating here. Yeah, I'll generate to here. Why don't I make a generated subfolder of this? Okay, so I'm going to generate into there. Now that does raise the question. Okay, that question's answered in my head. What about the question of how I want to build these? Do I build them from build tests, or do I build them from generate tests? If I'm building them from generate tests, then I have to build the test builder too. Right? Whereas if I don't, I can say let's just run build tests, but that raises the question, do I need to make a list of all the generated 4is files right here, or can I pass like this? Can I do that? The only way to know for sure is to go look at test builder and look at how it treats its input. It gets a list, so I think I can do that. Encode the name. Alright. We unencode the name, we make the whole name. We process the script. How does that decide on an output name? That is the next question. So I just grabbed the front of the directory. Okay, sweet. So I can do this. Awesome. Ha ha ha, awesome. And then that raises the final question. Which is, doesn't that mean there should be generated there? Maybe not, maybe not. But I suppose I am going to end up having to add each of these to the list. And this is where it would start to look more attractive to auto-generate this guy. Because when I go to run the generated tests, so now I'm going to have to hit F6 to generate the tests, F5 to F8 to run the test, F7 to build them, and then F6 to run them. And I'm okay with that, but how am I going to make that list in the run script? Do I list these out one at a time? Or do I auto-generate the run script? And if I auto-generate the run script, who on earth is in charge of building and running the generator? My goodness. Okay. It's like turtles all the way down. For now, I will list generated tests here manually to prevent myself from having one too many things to do, and we will cut down on the amount of craziness that's got to happen here over time. Yeah, let me just run through this in my head. So in order to run these tests, first you well, I guess we could stop building certain things. We don't need to actually build the test builder every time anymore. It's done. It works. So what I should make is a lean test builder script that doesn't actually build the test builder. At a certain point here, I need to upgrade 4coder's project system to, instead of binding these things directly, just let me make a list of all of the things I could ever do and dynamically at runtime rebind them. So that I can just make a list of all the operations I could ever want to do, and then I can say, like, alright, right now I need to configure myself so that F1 does this, and F2 does this, and F3 does this, go. And then I can reconfigure on the fly. That would be kind of neat. So, in the meantime, given the restriction that I have, I am going to do this. We're going to leave everything the way it is. We're going to pay the compilation time cost for now of running 3 of these scripts, F7, or F8, F7, F6, in order to test with generated stuff. And yeah, and then what we'll do is I also want to replace the darn scripting language thing that I'm using with a full parser that's real at some point. So many good things to do before I retire 4coder Alpha. I want to upgrade the project system. I'll tell you guys what I'm going to do in the last couple of builds of 4.0x once the testing stuff is done. So I'm going to do one overhaul to the project system, because I've been feeling that is needed for a while. And then I'm also going to do well, a certain secret surprise that I won't actually talk about right now. It's not like I don't want to hype it, so maybe I shouldn't say secret surprise. Maybe it's more like uninteresting surprise. It's not hype. It's just not worth getting into about it right now. Plus, I might put it off till 4.1x. Actually, hard to say. Let's focus. For now, we will just keep everything in the fully slow method of running. So to generate tests, what do we do? It's kind of like, whoops, building the tests, except that so there's code, there's build, here are the scripts. We also need generated, yeah, test builder, test generator. You know what? You guys, you all suck. Stop hyping it. The new feature is so not hype. I don't even know what else to tell you. If you're just setting yourself up for disappointment, quite honestly. I feel like it's a snowball effect, and I can't stop you all from hyping now. You've got to stop. It's not going to be good if you keep this up. And there's no cake. Cake is not involved. There's your, like, if you want to play 20 questions, is it cake? No. Darn. You know, Twitch chat has this really annoying problem where you can't pick a color scheme where you can read everyone's name. If you pick the light color scheme, you have a little bit of trouble with dark blue. And I think there's another color that's hard to, I'm forgetting right now. You can pick the light color scheme, but then there's like a bright neon yellow that doesn't really read very well, so you have to keep switching, which is what I've just done because I noticed a name in the stream chat that looked familiar, but it's not. Glitch Heart Deb. Maybe it's familiar, it's just been a while, I'm not sure. But I couldn't read that before, and now I can because I switched to the light scheme. Don't join on the bandwagon here. I shouldn't have said anything. You guys just suck. Alright, and then we're going to push on the scripts this time, and we just have to run once, like so, and then we're done. Handmade magazine. Uh-huh. Out of water. I keep checking to see if I have water by like jiggling the water bottle around, like water, and I keep hearing no water, and it just can't stop myself from checking over and over again because of how bad I want there to be water. I should have done that when I took my other break. Alright. Let's keep making progress, people. Forward progress. Don't let the chat derail you. Okay. I should just turn you guys off because you suck so much. So what I want to do is just make sure we've linked everything up correctly. Hello world. Hey, ho ho ho! What? What? Okay. Now we're in good shape. Let's go ahead and write this sucker. So this is super trivial. We're just going to write a series of generates, and the first one we want to do is generate we want to generate something that starts with a nearly empty file with a little bit of content and then adds to one token at a time. Okay, so we're going to do generate token overflow, or generate like I don't know what I want to call this, like capacity stressor 1. Each of these are just going to be simple little functions. So what we want to do is, when this runs, it's going to be running when not the generator. When this test runs, it's going to be under test data sample files. What I want to start doing is organizing my sample files a little bit. So these are going to be called source. Mictor source. And what I want to do is just move all of those into the source. All right. Okay. So they're all sitting in source now, and what we want to do is we want to eliminate everything. How do I eliminate? Okay. We're going to have that, and we're going to have canonical. Alright, so here's how the test infrastructure will work once we start doing content testing. We will have these files to get us started, so if we want to load a file to get the process started, it'll live here, and it'll never get modified. As soon as we load such a file, we will change directory to dest and save as to create a situation where this file, or the file is saved here, right? While I have the chat here, maybe you guys can help me out with something. Yeah, and then we test against canonical later. What I want to know is, how do I do this thing where on my git ignore, basically let me describe what I want to do, and then maybe the chat can pitch in and be helpful instead of hyping things that aren't necessarily coming soon that I told them to forget about. So let's see how you guys handle the situation. sample files, I want to be able to, wait, back up. I don't like how I organized that. I changed my mind. I want you guys to not actually live here. So we're going to do test, we're going to call this like output and then output canonical. There we go. Oh, later, Koifa. Probably gone already. But now you guys can be helpful. I want to be able to say we'll keep sample files synced. I want to ignore everything in output, and the problem is I want to make sure that it still creates this directory, right? So if I just say ignore everything in output like this, when it syncs, it won't also create an empty folder. This is a big problem for me with certain things I set up like this. Is why I have this, input data thing has that text file in it. It forces the repository system to actually make that directory everywhere. Otherwise, it ends up like you have to go manually make the directory whenever you set up on a new computer, because it doesn't, when you pull, it doesn't pull and set up that folder, and then it does, you run some test that needs to read that folder, or you run some packaging script that needs to read from that folder. And the question, so Doubter has the answer. He knows how to do what I want to do. The question is, how do I unignore the file, right? If I want to ignore literally everything. On the other case, I could just do this 4ID trick. So how do I say, if I put .get ignore here, how do I tell this one to unignore this? How do I say over here, ignore everything in there, but not .get ignore, fool? How do I do that? What's the syntax? I see. So you want me to do like this? Is that what you're saying? Correct me if I got that wrong. Or is it like this? Like unignore this? Which one? Learn me how to get. At the beginning of the line. Okay. Yes. Yes to which one? I assume you mean at the beginning of the line. Yeah. Okay. So let's do this then. I want to standardize how I'm doing that everywhere. I'm not going to ignore anything in here, but let's delete file, yes, and then we can make a new get ignore here and just leave that one empty. And files, output get ignore, and this one I'll put a get ignore that just forces it to create the thing. So we have all that shit. Let me go through and get rid of these unused get ignores now. Wow, so much file. Alright, yes. Alright, let's take a peeksy poo. Great. Now that wasn't the right folder. So now it is... Okay, that looks good, but I don't have any files in the output or output canonical folder to actually exercise that. So let's just say that basic CPP is an output canonical and an output. How about that? How about that? Perfect. Awesome. Oh, you can have sub get so these get ignore files actually like apply to everything within their. Wow. Let's do that. I like that. I'm gonna keep taking your suggestions. So if you keep throwing out ideas, you best just be ready for me to take the time to. Wait, this one doesn't ignore anything. Yeah, that's just there to force it to open this directory. But let's do this. Git ignore. Now input data is automatically doing that. And output is automatically doing that. Alright. Now that is kind of a game changer, actually. Let's see how that looks-y-loos. Again, I don't have a test case where I can actually see. Superb. Okay. Set up content diffing folders. Cool, cool, cool. And now what we're going to do is we're going to say that when we generate a test, it starts in, it's going to run in that folder with those files. So we're going to go create, yeah, so I'm going to start controlling this a little bit. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make a file called like mostly small.cpp. It's going to start with a comment, and it's going to contain int main, now we're going to go down, 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 and then we'll start the process of typing things. Okay. So that's what small will look like. Ooh. And then the capacity stressor here is going to do the following things. First of all, let me look at this so I have an example of how this works. Out, fopen, write binary. What is the name of this file? It's under the generated script. We'll call it gen test or gen test. Cap stress 1 dot 4 is. Alright. If out does not equal 0, f close out, else we're gonna say, you know, I don't know, dude, shit's fucked. Something like could not open boom bop boom bop boom. Could not open output file boom bop boom. We'll just make a quick little helper here. Try open output char star name boom 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 name file out equals try open output. There we go. Now now what we can do is start fprintfing out a script. There we go. Alright, so the first thing this is going to do is we're going to wait 1, and then we're going to key O modifier control to open a file. It'll be right here, and then we're going to type with one space between each small.cpp. Then we're going to wait. Now, an idea is coming to me, which is the question: why am I generating this test? Oh, I remember why. Don't you worry. I know it looks like I'm just writing a test with C code right now, but we're going to introduce some big-time loops. Big-time loops coming up here. So I type small.cpp, I wait 1, and then I'm going to key new line with no modifiers, thereby opening the file, and I'll wait 1, and then I'm going to I said press down a couple times, right? We'll start like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why don't I just do Control G 6 new line? Yeah. G modifier control, wait 1, key, well, this is more like type 6, I can't remember which side of the key presses type goes on. Test builder, I have a question. How does type work? You meant type. So Flying Solomon asks, oh, I just thought input simulation is great, but will there be possibility to translate tests for different binding systems? It's a good question. I've thought about that. Actually, no, there won't be. you won't be able to write one test script that tests multiple different input systems, and that's probably for the best because first of all, suppose you have a Vim style binding system and an Emacs style binding system. The translation, if possible, would be severely non-trivial and not worth the effort. In that case, what would be better is to be able to specify a test paired up with the DLL that it's supposed to run with, which isn't that big a deal because the way I'm running my tests is on a command line. I specify the test I want to run, and that design wasn't arbitrary. That's set up that way so that I can also, with that test, if I want, I can specify that it must run with a particular customization, right? So I can use a -d and then the custom DLL, and that way my tests are actually a DLL paired with the test input. Yeah. So Doubter is asking, why is there no binding for jumping to the beginning or end of a file? Yeah, so the answer is that I just do this, right? Whoops. I just do this, right? Now, obviously that's not a general system. You have to do my weirdness where you put top and bottom at the beginning of every single code file, and most people find that really silly. I just like it because it's a rare action that I don't do very often, and so I don't want to reserve a key for it. But I understand that since I'm shipping default bindings, I should probably not optimize for that case, which means I should just add that. What you're asking for is not that hard to add, so I probably should do that. It's a good idea. I just didn't when I was first optimizing for myself. And oh yeah, there's no reason to feel bad about this trick. Works just fine because it's not. I mean, that's not going to that's not a performance problem. It's not like, fucking trying 10,000 times to advance and then failing or something like that. It's basically like, oh, cap. It's like if too big, set to line count, jump. It's fine. It might feel weird, but there's no performance reason for not doing it that way. It's just like more typing than is worth it. Flying Solomon points out that his macros record functions and not the input, and I understand that, but you can't even go with that because if I want to test someone's Vim, if I want to maintain several DLLs, and I'm maintaining a Vim version, an Emacs version, and a Sublime version, for instance, and I'm shipping all of these myself, I need to be able to test those, and I don't want to have one set of tests that's supposed to apply to all of them, because when you're testing Vim, you're testing do the mode changes work correctly. That's not a thing you even have a concept for. So trying to abstract all over all those so that my tests are applicable to all of them isn't the way I would want it. And there are functions in one that don't exist in the next, right? If I have one DLL with these functions in it, I can't record those functions and then say, when you're running this DLL, use those functions. They're in a different DLL that isn't even loaded, right? And this has to be like a cold format that I can store and run from. So that's just not the way I want this thing to work. Now, this isn't for macros, by the way, just so we're clear. This is not going to be turned into a macro system. Because of what you're saying, a macro system is a little bit complicated, and really I want to provide several options for macro systems because the macro system you've got does work pretty well up to the point where you try to have commands with input I don't know, like this, right? It's possible to make this work. It's just a pain. I can't remember if you did that or not. So I think you did, right? You basically store the parameters. So basically there are two styles of macro systems. One would be very directly similar to this where you're just recording the input, and some people want it that way. Other people would want a macro system that's a little more high level where it records the command it called and the parameters to that command and replays that. And so I'm going to provide both options once I've got macros. But But yeah, for the testing, I think I think it makes most sense to do purely input driven because of the fact that I don't want to be testing do these commands work, because there's a full stack of like input from the operating system, the 4coder core, and then the custom layer. If I make my recording just a recording of the commands, then I only test everything that happens after a call to a command upwards, which that can call back down into these layers, but it can't test any of the things that led up to that call very easily. Whereas recording from down in this layer means not only am I testing some of the, like, I'm testing everything above where that recording happens. Things below where that recording happens, I'm still not testing. But then I'm testing the whole core and the whole custom layer for any custom layer I want to test on, right? Without having to even modify that custom layer. It's just, I think it's the best call. But I totally hear you that for a macro system, it's not what you would want. It's not even what I think most people would want. It's just, maybe I should not even bother shipping an input-driven macro system now that I think about it. Okay, anyways, so we're typing, I feel like that's just confusing since I'm going to do it this way since it's two numbers and neither of them are even, like, long. So anyway, key in the number 6, and then we're going to new line, and then we're going to, what's next? It's unclear to me why I thought it would be a good idea to make this a bunch of separate calls. Okay, so we've jumped to the correct line, and now what we're going to do is in a loop. At the very end of this, we're going to how do I save as? Do I even have that as an option anymore? If I don't have save as, then I have a little bit of a problem, which is that I'm loading the sample file, but I really want to be loading okay, hold on. So say I'm here and I open small.cpp. How do I save this to a different file? Save as. Rename file, what does that do? Rename file query. Okay, I don't think save as is an option, which means it basically gives me two possibilities. I think the right thing to do is to implement save as, and no. No, I disagree with my previous statement. Having considered it a little bit more, I think the right thing to do is, hold on. We're going to say, let's make a couple of changes here. So all of this is going to go into a different print for reasons you'll come to understand over time. Do. And then, wait, no, not there. Yeah, okay, so after we've done that, what we want to do is, oh, shit. I'm going to have to implement the command, but it won't be save as. I'm going to do save as someday, but we're not going to do save as today. What we're going to implement instead is go to end of file. I don't want to talk about it. Okay? So y'all just go ahead and screw right off. I don't want to talk about it. So set the mark. And then wait one, go to the end of the file, which we will do with a key end with a control on it. Actually, let's just do a page down with a control on it. Not sure which one I prefer. I prefer page down with a control on it. Page down, and then what we're going to do is we have we're going to wait one, and then we're going to key C modifier control. Looks like Flying Solomon's on it, the same idea as me. And now we've copied this buffer. We're then going to key K control in order to kill that buffer. So it works like this. We're in sample file. We're in here. We go small.cpp and then enter. It'll be a new file, so let me try that again. Small.cpp. I press space, control space to make sure that the mark is where it needs to be. I hit control page down, which would take me to here. Only trouble with that is my number typer doesn't let me do negatives right now. But that's a possibility. The other nice thing about talking about negative go-to line numbers is at some point I'll want to be able to type right negative numbers because the Vim folks like to be able to do Well, right now, even if you got a negative number in there, it wouldn't take you to the end. I'd have to program it to do the arithmetic. If you got a negative number in there right now, it would take you to the beginning. But I could tell it to wrap, or at least to allow the first segment of negative numbers to wrap, and then going past the end, you go to 0. Going past the end this way, you go to the end of the file. It's a possibility. Now, in the meantime, I would come to here, copy, and then Control-Shift-K to kill. Then we're going to hit wait 1. We're going to key back 1. Then we're going to type output. And then we're going to wait 1 and press enter. And then we're going to type, we're going to wait 1, and we're going to type small.cpp. Now the only problem with this is it requires, can I do new files still? Okay, so say I did small.cpp, and it looked like this. And, oh, you know what I'll do? Yeah, okay, we'll leave that there. Heyo. Kill it. Now let's try this again. Sample files. Open it. Type in the name of the source. Copy it. Close it. Back 1. Output. Small.cpp. Open. Okay, but what if instead of that I did new file output small.cpp. Boom. That still creates that thing. So it doesn't matter. We'll keep the version that does Control O, and then what we'll do is say when we come here and we type in small.cpp, we then go ahead and clear small.cpp, new line, then we wait 1 modifier key space, wait 1 modifier key page down, controlled, so go to the bottom, and then we will key D modifier control. Alright. Yep, Flying Solomon's right on my heels, select all and destroy, and then finally we will paste. So that's key V modifier control, new line, and then at that point will look like this, and we'll want to hit wait 1 more time and Control M, wait 1 more time after that, and key space. There we go. So that gets the thing to happen. Alright, now this is something I'm going to want to use a lot. So generate, or I'm going to call this write open test file default bindings, char file name, and the way this will work is everywhere that I said small.cpp just becomes a %s. Actually, I'm going to do like source name, dest name, so I can separate those out. Any other occurrences of small? No? Okay. And we need the output file, and then we can do source dist. Alright, so there we go. Write open test file output small.cpp small.cpp. This lets me never contaminate my source file so that I can run the same test over and over again. Yeah, so Flying Solomon says maybe I want a default wait time because it looks like I wait after literally every single thing. That's probably not a bad idea. And then I could just set default wait to 1 and it would work, and then I would be able to set that to 0 for the cases where I want to pile stuff in on one frame. But it does look like a default wait time would be a good idea. Let's add that to the stream to do, shall we? Because that would make this script generation faster, script parsing would be faster. Set a default wait time to insert before every event. All right. Alright, and then the rest of this we can do like this. So having gotten to this point, we then say, okay, Control G 6, new line, and then we can begin the loop. Well, I think I would keep a callable version of the wait, like a command version of the wait, just because otherwise you have to figure out when you need to preemptively set the wait and then set it back for one-time things where you want to wait for longer periods of time or something. I think I'll just have a thing that's like default wait that goes in after commands that is initially 0 that you can set, and also keep the wait thing as just a separate thing. It's not really hard to support both, and I mean they work well. They don't like conflict with each other in any way. Okay. So now what we're gonna do is we're starting with how many tokens here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to focus on tokens here. We want to get to 4,096 tokens. So 4,096 tokens is the goal. We have 7, so we need 4,089 more tokens. Now, how many tokens are in a line like this? Int a equals 0, semicolon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5. So if I divide by 5, 820-ish repeats. We'll do 1,000 repeats. OpenGL dirtiness? What are you talking about? You seeing like characters flicker or something? Alright, daughter head, that's funny. That's funny. The reason I don't want to just do a macro with this one doubter is that it's not just a matter of like repetitiveness, it's actually generating that much text, and so this is also a matter of making the script smaller. Like making the script smaller means it takes less time to do the string output, less time to do string reading and parsing. It's just all around better to compress that in a way that isn't just like a macro that hides that it's happening, but actually makes it go away in this case. Oh, when you say OpenGL dirtiness, you're talking about like the idea of having, well, for the scripting language I don't care quite as much because you can't really get into complex situations where someone else set a state that you weren't thinking about, like you called some function that you didn't used to set a state and then I made a change and now it does set the state, and that introduced a bug for people who were calling it and weren't, where it wasn't setting the state and they were counting on the state to not change, kind of a thing. That's the nastiness that can happen when you're doing those state changes. In this case, it's not, I mean, the reason I would include it is just because it's like additive, right? I wouldn't say that it's like, don't worry, I'm not criticizing you, just giving you a reason why I'm not doing it that way, because normally I would, right? I would just be like, oh, let's just macro this stuff and compress it that way, but that wouldn't compress it all on the spot where, in the places where it matters most in this case. No, it would be additive the way I would do it, because the wait command, all it does is increment a number. So it's very easy to keep it doing that, and then just have the default increment be set as a thing as well that can be stacked with that, right? Winter Squirrel, it's Windows 7, and I have it set that way just cause. Well, mostly just cause it's better. Like, it doesn't do as much complicated stuff with Windows compositing in this mode. I do like it better, though. I won't pretend that I'm not drawn to the aesthetic more. Alright, so at each step what we're going to output is wait 1, type int, wait 1, key space, modifier none, wait 1, after I put in the space, we're going to type foo %d, and then we're going to wait 1, and then let's see, we're going to type another space, we're going to wait 1, later doubter, and let's see, then we're going to type, we're going to key an equal sign, then we're going to put another space, and then we're going to type, I guess we're just going to key actually. Why don't we type? We type a 0 semicolon, and then we'll wait 1, and we will key a new line. So that'll basically do the following. Type int space foo0 space equals space 0 semicolon new line. Got to make sure to always put a new line. This is a new line based language. It parses by line. So there we go. And then it'll new line wrap to the top. Foo1 equals 0. And you know, if we wanted to have even more fun, we could do this. Alright. Cool. So that's neat. And let's run it. Comma. Comma. There we go. So now, if I return here and I go test input scripts generated, here's the file we just generated. 1,000, 10,000, 16,000 lines long. We could cut that in half if we got rid of the wait ones, which we'll do. We could make it even smaller if we could type more easily things like space, which might be worth it. Can make it much, much smaller. And if we made this here invocable. The only problem is my invocability doesn't let me pass in parameters right now. It probably shouldn't be able to do that either, which means all I could abstract is I could make maybe invocable 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I can make 14 of these invocable. I don't know if modifier state is such a good idea. I mean, it just changes a little too frequently right now. If space and new line were typable and they didn't have to be keyed, then maybe, because most of these, you can see like here it all switches to none. I'm not sure that that would help much. I think the things that would help the most is, one, I could make some of the two of these sections. I could make them invoked, which would make this file smaller, and would also mean that I only have to build them once. And I mean, it wouldn't save that much time, but it would compress this a tiny little bit. Probably not honestly worth it. But the other thing I could definitely do is get rid of wait 1 and make spaces typable. If spaces were typable, that'd be a game changer for how much space this takes, because there's like 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so there's 3 of these, but you have to remember I'm not just talking about removing those 3, because I would also then be able to merge. Really, I'd be turning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'd be turning 7 lines into 1 with that. Now, maybe a default modifier of none would be good, so that if I don't put one in, it automatically deduces none and speeds up the parsing a little bit. That's worth considering. So I'm going to add those in. Make space is typable, not other white space, though we don't keep it simple. Default modifier none. Well, actually, that will just be, no, I'm not going to do that one. That'll be evaporated when I get rid of it. I could make arbitrary strings typable if I made the delimiters work. I can't really do new lines though because it's parsed on new lines. The simplest thing I can do is this without making the parsing super different. So that's what we'll go with. And yeah, now let's see if we can build that. Is that not a key? Key. Ah, it's not a key. Alright, no worries. Page down. Page down. Whoops. Please replace that with page down. F8. 7 to build. Now, control page down isn't actually going to do anything right now. So for my last act today, I think I will go ahead and implement that go to end of file. I'm going to take a quick look at my list of commands actually. Yeah, I don't have one. Okay. End of textual line, end of line, seek white space, and up end of line. Custom command sig, seek beginning of file, go to beginning of file. Hey, great, thanks for interrupting me, Visual Studio. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say get me the current view, view set cursor, app view seek position 0, 1. And then for the other one, what we'll do is we'll take the view, and I need to go and look at my API docs real quick. Types and functions, view ID, view split position, view summary, buffer ID, cursor mark, line, view region, scroll bars. Alright, so we're going to want to use the buffer ID to get a buffer. Buffer summary buffer equals get buffer app access protected view buffer ID. Is that all correct? Buffer ID get buffer access goes second. buffer summary, size. I think that those work. Flying Solomon, can you link me again? I don't have a link handy for yours. Maybe yours looks exactly the same as mine. I think I just did that correctly. Now what we want to do is we got to go over to MetaGen, where I link these kinds of things, and we're going to look for page up. Yes. Control. Go to beginning of file, end of file. Key page up. Yeah. Modifier control. Page up. Alright, cool. If you did it the same way, then I don't necessarily remember exactly how the API works all the time, so it's good to have someone who's used it more recently than me actually on here checking out what I'm doing. It's kind of weird. Yeah. Alright, I think if I take a look here, go to, I don't have command metadata though. Oh, you know what? I didn't dock these. Let me dock them real quick. Pretty self-explanatory, but you gotta dock it. Alright. Run the build again. And now, end of file, there we go. Now we have beginning of file, end of file bound to control page up, control page down. Let's try and run the test. Ah, that's still running that. Okay, very good. Very good. You can go to sleep now. Generated. I've run the generator. Now I want to go to build test builder. No. Build tests. And that's going to automatically do that. So I should have it in here. Test data, input data, gen test cap stress 1. Perfect. So now I want to go to run regression tests. And I don't want you to really do this test. It's kind of just there to test the testing system. Instead, I want you to run my first real test. Cap stress 1. You guys ready for this? This is going to be wild. This isn't right. I can't tell it to exit. So what happened there? Sample files. Output. Key back. Alright, let's I mean, it's still basically achieving the same thing. The problem is it's not going to output correctly. I want my output tests to work. But this is going to push through several boundaries where the tokens should break down, I think. I'll just let this run through because it's not killing anyone. And it's kind of fun to watch. I do want to pull this up and see what's happening. Look at this. I start by 4. Even with all this work 4coder is doing, I believe this is the one that's being tested. It's still not using that much CPU. Now this isn't a macro system, this is a testing, input-driven test system. It kind of looks like a macro system, but you wouldn't want to use this for macros for reasons that Flying Solomon and I discussed earlier. I believe it was Flying Solomon who brought it up. Basically this does direct input control instead of sort of abstract command control, so if you had like a modal system, this wouldn't be a very good way to do your macros, and especially if you ever like changed your bindings around a little bit and you had a macro that you wanted to still work with the old bindings, that was set up with the old bindings for some reason, that could still be possible as long as your commands are still the same. Like as long as you haven't changed the implementation of your commands and just what you bind to. This is also kind of a cool way to even just do performance testing, right? You can just look at not how long this takes, because it's frame capped to 60 frames a second, but you can kind of stress it and look like, oh look, it's hitting at 9 CPU. I wonder if I can get that down. I mean, that's kind of a lot of CPU for such a simple task, but it is rendering a lot of stuff. It's filling up a screen every 60 times a second, but I feel like we can get that down, especially given the font ideas we proposed earlier today. Yeah, I could speed this up without the waiting. The problem is if I don't do enough waiting, there's a limit to how many keys I can input per second. I could probably type like int in one frame. I can only do up to like 8 characters. Now if I pushed it, I could actually make the internal up to like, 64 characters. Then I could really start pushing things in a more interesting way, actually. Alright, we're just about to cross over the boundary. Yep, we've crossed it. So if this still had any bugs where it crashed on a token count exceeding, a certain amount, it would be a problem. Get the CPU down. You wait between frames. What are you talking about, you wait between frames? You saying I could increase the wait between frames to get the CPU down? Yeah, the CPU stress is steadily increasing, probably because the size of the buffer is bigger, and so the operations are getting worse. Which this is a pretty good measure of how well the buffer algorithm and structure works too. By pretty good, I mean good, easy to see at the levels of granularity that I'm still sucking at. Almost done now. We won't run this whole thing again. We'll it doesn't even exit automatically. We'll end this process. And now what we want to do is fix a few things. So, generator, you forgot to exit. Wait, probably not right there. Alright. So, a couple of problems. It didn't seem to open the right output file, and I'm not sure why that happened. I hit Control backspace. Is that wrong? Yes, that's wrong. Key back. We want that unmodified. Hey, now it's doing the right thing. So the other thing is that wasn't actually using tokens, now that I think about it. So we actually do need to run the whole thing again because it wasn't coloring it last time, right? Because it didn't have the right file name. So now it should work. Yeah, I didn't save it either, but I'm not actually interested in saving it right now. It also still says output small. I guess I didn't... I'm not sure why. So this isn't quite right yet. I don't want it to save until right now. I'm just stress testing it. This isn't really a contents test. I'm just making sure I don't accidentally edit my source files when I do that whole setup thing. I do want to get that file to set up correctly so that when I go to add, I'll probably do the saving just so that I can get it to so I can test that that's all working so that I don't have to think about this again when I come around to doing the contents thing. So yeah, I'll go back and do the file saving, I think. Now, what I should probably do is set up a special key command that lets you quit a test partway through, but I don't want to do that right now. I want to run this test to the end. I'm going to end up wanting to have ways to manage which tests I'm running on a fine grain, since they are going to take this long, to put in this many tokens. Now the other thing I could do is, instead of having this one long test that puts on tons and tons of tokens this way, I could do a less brute force thing that starts with fairly large files that are near the border of 4000 and 1024 and 4096, and the various borders where I think it could happen. I could auto-generate the starting files and then only leave a few tokens left to type and speed these tests up tremendously too, which is probably where I should actually push this next time, because tests this long aren't really going to be that helpful. The amount of time I'll spend waiting to get feedback would have just been easier to manually catch the bug while writing code for a couple days, right? I want this to catch bugs really quickly. So long wait times like this won't really be appropriate. Which means I might also have my test generator generate sample tests, sample files directly too. So it'll be responsible for generating the sample file and maybe even the canonical outputs. With the test generator, what I could start doing is stuff like, here I generate the initial file, I have a carefully checked canonical file, and then an input script that is supposed to get 4coder to make a certain series of edits that lead to the canonical file that we output for that. And then the test generator could really start being useful. I could also get the test generator to even output those scripts I was trying to figure out how to output before. The test generator could be the, we'll have the test builder is a thing that we just leave that sits around and implements the scripting language and doesn't get rebuilt very often, unless we're updating the scripting language. And the test generator will generate all of the actual test files and the scripts that tell it which tests to build and which tests to run. And then I can control everything from test generator, which would be nice. I think that's the direction we'll move this. But I'm going to wrap up pretty soon here today. Maybe I'll do a later stream in a few hours. We'll see. I have another engagement planned for a couple hours here. Yeah, exactly. I'll just have a thing that tells it how to get to the exact offset I need inside of a file and have it do the little bits of changes it needs to make to test something. So like, I could have it start this test at about 800 and then do a few lines, right? And I would still be crossing that barrier to over 4096. Alright, cool. So it's crossing that barrier without failing again. I'm going to kill it right there. We're going to do some improvements the next time I resume working on this, because it's just taking too long to run these kinds of tests, and it's not automating as much as it could in terms of controlling stuff. We have a lot of cool ideas now. So let's come over here. Automatically generate input data. So we're kind of working on that. I'm going to expand this idea out, is what I'm going to do. So in addition to those things, some other things I've been thinking we should do now is generate the script build list, generate the run test list, generate sample files, and canonical files to accompany tests. Yeah, I think this will be a lot of fun to start really stressing this stuff. So that's mostly looking good. There's only one last thing I want to fix before I go, which is that it still didn't get the output file name correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say let's make these tests much faster, so we don't have to sit around all day, or even get to sit around all day watching it. We're going to make it like 20 lines, but I want to watch it try to open this file again, because I feel like it's still doing something wrong. It switched to output by doing this. 4coder non-source, test data, it started in sample files, and then it typed open, kills the file, open, then key back, then it types output, enter, and then it types small.cpp, enter, but somehow it ended up with output small.cpp in the directory above it. How did it end up with that? Somehow this did not work. Yeah, somehow when I went from here, it went output, and the new line didn't trigger this. I'm not sure. Did it need more time to figure this out? Let's look at the generated script. New line. This should have worked. The only thing, you know what we could do that would make life, we could just do this. Let's just tell it to type in the whole thing and not use that 4coder idiom there, and see how that goes, because then it will be forced to put in a slash. And yeah, I know that's basically me discovering a bug and not looking at it, but I feel like that's just a bug with the timing somehow. Like maybe waiting for one frame after the new line is causing a problem. You know, we could test that real quick and see if it's the explanation. Let's put in like a 10 here and here. Well, let's do one at a time. I'm going to do small changes. F7, F6. Hey, so that fixes it. So this is the one. So that fixes it, which means that the problem was caused by that. So we want to figure out why is it that with one frame after the new line I can't start typing yet. It's not clear that would be the case. Some kind of input related problem, right? It's like somehow the UI is not updating as quickly as the input is coming in. Not sure, but let's just do it this way from now on. So we can remove. I don't want all the tests to be dependent on things like they're already the tests working are already dependent on the clipboard working, file opening working, file like navigation working. I want to make them a little less dependent on those things so that I can have focused test on those things. So let's rebuild the script. Much shorter this time. Rebuild the input data and run the script. When I resume, we're going to want to when I resume, we're going to want to I don't know which one it is. I feel like it's probably the one with less memory. Ah, shit. Well, nobody asked me why that happened. The one with less memory should have been the testing one. Yeah, there's probably a frame of latency on the dialogue or something is my guess about why it's all messed up. So yeah, when we resume, which might be today or it might be next week, I don't know, we will look at these kinds of things and generate cap stressors that are small and near the boundaries. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna leave the stream off there for now. Thank you everyone who came to check it out. If there is more today, I will tweet about it about 10 minutes in advance. We will see what happens, but see you around. Bye bye.